Thank you for listening to the Golden Hour Drip podcast with me, Logan Lee Miller. Enjoy the show. Welcome back to the Golden Hour Drip podcast. I'm your host, Logan Lee Miller. And as I was planning my day today, I love to do it in different increments, right? Like I have my morning, my mid-morning, my afternoon, and my evening, right? And I love to have little deadlines or time slots where I'm supposed to be doing something. It helps me stay on track. It helps me not spend too much time on something. It's easy to devote so much time to something and not the other areas. So for example, right now I'm working on a website. And it's really, really easy for me to just focus all of my energy on this website. I literally have been trying to create a usable website for myself since college. Since I was a sophomore, junior in college, I remember buying my very, very first domain, and I will get in a rabbit hole where I'm okay, I have to focus on this, and I'll stay up super, super late, working on it. And then the next day I'm burnt out because I spent so much time doing it and I didn't have time for the other things in my life. And right now I'm trying to prevent that, right? From 2018 to 2024, I've been working on setting this boundary. And so with a website, it's easy for me to continue trying to work out the kinks, continue to try and fix things or find photos or build it out or watch a video on how to do it, right? And it takes a lot of time. But for me, I'm trying to set the boundary of, all right, we are only going to work on this for an hour, 1 hour, whatever we can get done. Great. If there's something additional that we can't get to, we're going to write a note. We're going to pause and we're going to move on to the next activity. And maybe an hour is not enough time for you for something. Just having a time crunch. And I find when I have a time limit, I get more done and more accomplished in that shorter time period. So if I'm meeting for work, if I have a little meeting scheduled or whatever, I try to put a cap on it. And it's okay, it's 15 minutes. Okay, it's 20 minutes. Nowhere ever do I want a meeting to be an hour long, right? What bullets? How can we simplify this? How can we get it completed? And I find that having this structure is really helpful for my productivity. And so today I was all right, I'm going to work on this project for this amount of time, and I'm going to do this for this amount of time. My podcast, I have to carve out time to sit down and record. And there's a couple stipulations that come with that, right? The house needs to be quiet. So Garrett can't be bouncing around doing anything. The dogs have to be quiet, and we need this pocket of time so I can talk to you and you can talk to me, right? I'm just kidding. I know you're not going to talk to me, but you can always leave me a comment. Would love to know. But I know that it has to be certain constraints. I also know that if I don't film it when I say I'm going to film it, or sit down and record when I need to record it, it's going to be pushed to the next day, right? Because I am so diligent. I've never, ever, ever one time missed a Monday. And it was my second episode that I got sick back in 2020. But other than that, I am so consistent. I will make sure that my podcast episode is up because I know the creators I love to follow. It's part of my routine. It helps me get things done. And so if they say that they're going to post something on Wednesdays, my favorite podcast post on a Wednesday, if they don't post that Wednesday, then I'm oh, where's my content? I was looking forward to it, right? So I know in order to be consistent, I have to follow the schedule. I have to sit down. I have to record. And it just so happened that I'm following my structure perfectly today. And I finished up with something and I told myself, all right, when the clock hits 12, I am sitting my booty down in this chair. I'm going to talk to you. Okay. I've already prepped my episode. I know what I want to talk about. I have such a clear vision, but I was feeling just a little tired. And because I have so much to do today, we're preparing for travel for the weekend, and our we'll get into it, but anyways, there's a couple things that are going on, and I know that I have to stick to the structure, get the things done, execute, so that I can enjoy my weekend and I can have so much fun. So I was like, okay, it's 11:45. Like, I need to be getting ready, setting up, and I wanted a coffee. Okay. I've already had my coffee this morning, but I wanted like a little bit of a treat. I think coffee to me is like a treat. It's like, okay, like a little special beverage I'm making for myself. And I look forward to it. Okay. I look forward to it every single morning. And sometimes when I go to bed, I'm thinking about the coffee that I'm having. It's like Christmas. It's like, okay, go to sleep so you can have your coffee in the morning, especially when I'm experimenting with different beans or different concoctions, syrups, whatever. And that like helps me go to sleep, especially like if I'm trying to work on the website and I'm staying up until 10, 11 o'clock, I know that I'm not going to have my easy morning if I sleep in. So it is just like keeping yourself regimented for a few things. But as I ran to the kitchen, I poured my shot of espresso. I added my ice and my milk. We're trying to clear out our fridge, so it's like looking kind of bare. I had leftovers, whatever. I know that I'm going to be taking the 12 o'clock hour to record my podcast. And I'm like, all right, like I'm running around, and I get my coffee. And then as I just sat down, I realized that I'm recording and I should have drank this coffee around like the 11 o'clock hour so I could sip on it so that I could enjoy it. But I realized, like, is it going to be that big of a deal if I take a sip of coffee? And normally I have a beverage right here as I record, and there's not many times where I like choke, but there has been times I've choked or I've sneezed or I've got caught up in my throat, whatever. Like, there has been times, right? I've been recording this episode for over 4 years, and it wasn't until last week I was watching it's Justin Era by Sam Taylor. And she had a coffee, and she was recording, and she said that she wasn't going to take the time to record out the parts where she sips on her coffee because like she doesn't have the time and doesn't think it's a big deal. And I've always looked to podcasters who have like a host, and it's them sitting down and they can like take a moment to breathe, or they can take a sip of their water. And I find like when I record with a friend or have a guest on, like it is nice. You can take a drink, you can take a moment to gather your thoughts. And I was like, why is like, it's not a big deal for her to take a sip of coffee. And why do I have like this immense pressure on myself that I can't be like a normal human being? Like I feel like sometimes I have to showcase like this perfect like aesthetic or this perfect moment or this awesome recording. And the past couple of weeks, like, one, my computer broke, like I've talked about that. And two, like, halfway through my video, my last Monday episode, the mic stopped working. So this was Monday, and Justin Era podcast, I think she puts hers out on Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday. Like it's later in the week. And my mic had stopped working last Monday, and it didn't stop working. I forgot to press record. I forgot on this like little Zoom thing. I forgot to press record. And so the audio wasn't as bad. And guess what? Sam Taylor literally had the same situation where her episode did not record the first part on the mic. And I'm like, what the actual heck? Like, here she is, like showcasing the things that I've literally experienced. I experienced my mic not recording. I have a coffee, and right before I sat down here, I'm like, oh gosh, like I should have drank my coffee before recording. It's going to be so awkward, because usually like if I do have a beverage, I am drinking it right before I press record. My camera only records for 30 minutes. So after 30 minutes, I get up, I press go again, and I drink some more coffee. And I'm like, what the heck? Like sometimes we get so caught in our head on how we are supposed to show up in the world, and the perfectionism of something, even if like to others, you might not think, oh gosh, like her podcast is nowhere near perfect. Okay, that's fine. Like whatever you want to think. But for me, I'm like, okay, like I have a standard that I'm trying to stick to. And sometimes I'm like, is that standard really necessary? Is it really necessary to like have all of like the movie lights on or the movie magic or whatever? And another podcaster that I've talked about before is Lori Harder. And she has episodes that could be an hour long, could be an hour 20 long, could be 20 minutes long, could be 8 minutes long. Like the thing that she does is I think she records almost every weekday, 4 days a week or 5 days a week. And like, it doesn't matter how long her podcast episode is, like I'm still finding so much education, so much impact from it. It doesn't matter how long it is. And sometimes I'll get caught up like, oh my gosh, like my Friday episodes have to be 20 minutes and my Monday episodes have to be an hour. And I'm trying to think like that doesn't actually matter. Like the impact is still there. What I have to say is still there. And instead of just like trying to grasp for a perfectionism or trying to like do something that isn't really your true authentic life, like your day to day. And it doesn't even have to be bad. Like it's not bad that I have been trying not to drink my coffee on the podcast. It's just like an expectation I had for myself that isn't really necessary. Like it's not necessary to be like a robot. It's not necessary to like not allow people in or show that vulnerable side of, hey, like I'm just like you. And honestly, like seeing Sam literally have her podcast not record half of it and her sip the coffee during the podcast and like unapologetically say, I'm not going to edit it out. I'm like, oh my gosh, cheers to you. Like I'm going to drink my coffee right now because I feel like, oh, the awkward pause, like if I had a co-host, it would be totally different, but it's not. It's just me and you. So drink your water, drink your beverage. Let's take a little sip together. And that was perfect. And that's exactly what I needed. And I guess I'm just in the life period right now where I am burning so many like past beliefs down or past expectations that are no longer serving me. And I'm really wanting to step into this new season. And I have so many plans for this weekend. We are traveling to my mom and stepdad's house in Northeast Iowa. And it's so fun. It's so great. It's a long holiday weekend. I'm really looking forward to it. And I do not want to bring anything that is going to impair my weekend. My stepdad just had a major surgery and it's kind of stressed me out, to be honest. Oh my gosh, it stressed me out a lot. Okay. And I'm like really excited to go up and like be present. And I don't want to have to bring like everything else along. I don't want to have to bring my computer. I don't want to have to bring my podcast. And I really want to take it as like a quiet time. Like obviously we're going to be hanging out. Obviously we are going to be celebrating the weekend and just being together as a family. Like I'm really looking forward to that. But I also know that with life being so precious and like so fragile, that I want to be so granular and so specific on how I want to go into the next season. So I'm bringing my journal. I'm going to be bringing magazines and creating an old-fashioned vision board, because I don't think that a vision board has to be for any certain period of time. It does not have to be New Year's Eve. It does not have to be a Monday. It does not have to be a new start. Like you can create the new start in your brain. Like whenever you say, hey, I'm giving myself a clear board, then you can move forward and be like, okay, like it's a new start because I said it's a new start. So if you're listening to this, actually it's coming out September 2nd. So we're in the new month. It's a Monday. So this might be your perfect start. Or you could be listening to this podcast episode on a different day, and you could decide that you're going to start your new expectation for yourself, or your new goal, or your new life, your new way of being. And so I'm really, really excited for that this weekend, where I can just have space and talk with my family. Lily is going to, although it's like a very short time, she is in college and she has so much going on. She's going to be there for a little bit. I'm hoping to see my nibblings, which is your nieces and your nephews. That's like the name that you call them, nibblings. So cute. So I'm excited to see Marcella and Malcolm. I'm excited to see my sisters. I'm excited to see my brother, and to just like be peaceful. Because with the acknowledgement of Labor Day, we're going into fall, essentially. And I am really, really excited for fall. I'm excited for this season. I have loved summer so much. I feel like this was a pivotal summer. I feel like this is a summer I'm going to look back on and think, oh my gosh, like it was so much fun. I had so many memories. I really stepped out in my confidence and doing things. So I am really, really, really excited to look back at this time and to pull out photos and videos and to think, oh gosh, like I remember the summer of 2024, but that does not mean that I'm not also so excited for this upcoming season. We have so many things going on. I'm working on a huge project for November. I'm really scared, to be honest. I'm scared and excited at the same time. So I'm just like, I'm going through all the emotions today. Very much like pivotal, impactful time in my life. And I feel like I am just like gaining momentum that I didn't have in different periods of my life, different seasons. And I feel like sometimes we have to have a period where we are observing, or we're trying new things, we're trying them out, and we are experimenting with how we want our life to go. And I feel like for the first time in a couple months, I'm feeling so clear on my vision and what I would like to do in the next couple months, especially because fall welcomes in the new year, right? Like you go into winter, and I'm never wanting to wish away the days or the months, but it is fun to like look forward to something. And I'm looking forward to pulling out all of our fall things. I'm looking forward to, and there, look, you heard my dog bark. Okay. And while that would have literally, I hope he doesn't bark again, because if he barks again, I'm going to have to like pause this. But in the past, I would have literally shut off the episode, and I hope he doesn't do it again. Like, I hope he doesn't. I'm getting kind of nervous right now, but just remaining true to the authenticity and like rolling with the punches, because I literally just talked about like drinking coffee during it. And of course, like if he gets too noisy, like I will pause it and I will cut it out, because that's annoying. But sorry if that spooked you. And this happened. I don't know why, but sometimes I am scared to be seen, or scared to like make it a big deal. Last Wednesday, I was on a Zoom call, and I was like, I don't know, like sometimes I get nervous to essentially be seen, like, or to be like true to myself. Like I feel like sometimes I have to put on this huge front of like, I am perfect, I do all these things, and I don't want to have anybody feel like they have to cover for me, if that makes sense. I don't know. But on the Zoom, I was trying to listen, and there he barks again. Okay, now I'm getting nervous. I am gonna pause it. Okay, I don't know what spooked him. I don't know if it was a vehicle going past or what, but any other time I get nervous about that. Like my dogs are kind of like reactive dogs, and so if someone goes past, like the dogs are gonna bark. And I was on a Zoom call last Wednesday, and as I am like trying to watch, so there's like breakout rooms. We have like the big one where everybody is like talking and doing like all the things. I get so nervous for the breakout room, because at 4, the breakout room is around like 3 I don't know. It's like a short period of time. At 4, Garrett will get off his work, and I like join into this this call, and it's 15 minutes, and I get so nervous because are they going to hear Garrett in the background? Are they going to hear him shut the door? Are they going to hear him take the dogs outside? Are the dogs going to run around? Are they going to, like, I get so worked up about like how are people going to react to the environment that I'm at, because I do want to be calm. I do want to like express like professionalism, but sometimes like there are things that I cannot control. Like I can't control when Amazon goes past our house. I can't control when the dogs like get spooked and start barking or something like that, even though I take so many precautions, even though I try so hard. But when we go into the breakout rooms, I will be sitting there and like, I'll be nervous to talk. Like I will be nervous to like pop on there and be like, yeah, like I'm Logan, this is what I'm doing or anything. And the last weekend I was at the library and I got a phone call from Garrett, and I was like, hello, like so quiet, because even though I was in an area of the library, I was allowed to talk. I was so nervous to like show up or cause disruption. I don't know why, but it's like the fear of causing disruption and being seen, essentially. And part of that doesn't even make sense, because here I am checking to make sure this is still recording because I had to pause it. But it's sometimes we want to be seen in a certain way. We want to seem so poised and so collected, or at least I do. And when I am stepping outside of that, or getting outside of my comfort zone of showing up where I'm at in this moment, it can be so freaking scary. And I don't even know what, because we all have things go wrong in our life. We all have things that kind of go astray. And I have been really, really working on like just my confidence, I guess. And I might seem like a very confident person, and in certain areas I am, but there are other areas where I like struggle with that. And I'm like, oh gosh, like how can I like be more true to myself and show up where is need to be showing, like where I need to show up. And I don't know. So those are like some of the breakthroughs that I'm like trying to work on, to be honest. And it's not always easy. And honestly, sometimes it's quite difficult. And I am sorry if the dogs were like barking, and I hope that you couldn't hear the audio too much. And I am learning this like in yoga class as well. Like when disruptions happen, or I have a sequence that I am teaching. And the other day I was queuing for the next side, and I was like, okay, lift your right leg high, but I had already done the right leg high, and half of the class listened and half of the class were like relying on their intuition and knowing that I had messed up. And I was like so nervous. I was like, oh my gosh, like, are they going to think that I'm a bad yoga teacher? Are they going to think that I don't know what I'm talking about? Like it was all this imposter syndrome. And it was crazy because I was actually getting feedback on that class. And afterwards, my feedback coach was like, you did great. I've had that happen to me. And this teacher, my feedback coach, has been teaching for multiple years. And she's like, I actually had this happen to me the other day. And like, I had acknowledged it in class, but I apologized. So I was like, oh, sorry guys. And she's like, if that happens, you can simply go to the like side of the room that you want them to face and be like, okay guys, if you're on the wrong leg, come look at me. Something like that. Like very simple. Like you acknowledge it and you say, oh yeah, like that thing went awry. That thing, didn't happen, but you just are graceful with it. And I've been just trying so hard to be graceful with the mistakes that I'm making, or even just like acknowledging them, but not making it the biggest deal. And as I go into like this next season, I'm really trying hard to be okay with how I'm showing up, and being super nonchalant might not be the word, but just being chill. Like who actually cares if there's like a little simple thing that goes wrong. Like we all make mistakes. We all have those moments where it didn't go perfectly to plan, but if we can just acknowledge it and move on, I know that the impact or what you're actually trying to get across is going to be received by the people who need to hear it. So even like when I sit down and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, like, am I doing a good job? Am I putting on like a good show? Are people really like having, of course, like you're spending an hour talking to me on Mondays, right? Like you're listening. I want it to be impactful. I want it to be so good. And I think, and honestly, it would be a disservice if I wasn't so like truthful about some of the other things that happen, because although I do share my life and I do talk about the situations that are going on, sometimes I don't talk about the other things, like my dog's barking during my podcast recording, or wanting to take a sip of coffee, or maybe I use the wrong word in the wrong way, or I pronounce it wrong, or anything like that. And there is so much value in just showing up and sharing, like maybe the mistakes that you've made, or something that you're working on, because I know that I gain so much insight and inspiration from the creators that I look to. And there's been so many times where I have had something happen to me and literally the creator that I'm listening to had a very, very similar situation happen to them too. And it's this crazy like alignment thing where I'm not sure. I just take it as a reminder of like, okay, I am exactly where I need to be. I am in the right place at the right time, because if not, like I wouldn't have heard that exactly how it needed to be heard. So, and you can beat yourself up about like the mistakes you made, or you can take it as like a learning process. And I know in the past couple of videos, like last Friday, this past Friday, I like have been double checking my recording, because I kicked myself over and over, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like the second half of your episode sounds so echoey, because it was my camera who had picked up the audio. It wasn't my microphone. And like when that happened, I literally kicked myself because before I used the structure I use now, when I had just like started doing the visuals, I didn't know how to align the audio together with the video. And before I was using Audacity, and that is what I used for the audio. And this is when I very, very, very first started. And I was using Audacity, and I would do my best to have like the intro. And I remember one time like someone saying, oh, your intro was so loud, in comparison to like you actually talking. And then like I got a little bit better. And this past, honestly, it hasn't even been that long. I'm going to say 3 months. I have figured out how to connect my microphone to my visual. So the audio podcast would be from my microphone, but my visual podcast would just be from my Canon picking up the sound in the room. And it can be a bit echoey. It can sound like weird in comparison, like the mic quality is much better. And I remember I posted a short, and someone commented on that, plug in your microphone. And I just remember like feeling kind of embarrassed, because I hadn't yet had the knowledge or the technique to be able to connect the audio to the camera. And I didn't know how to edit it. I didn't know how to put it on. And I was like, like I read it and I thought, I am working on that. I know it's not that my mic wasn't plugged in. It was just that like my visual didn't have the microphone. And I felt like such a little fraud and such like an amateur. But soon, like I gained the skill set to be able to do that, to connect to my microphone. And if you listen to past visuals, it sounds like an empty room. Hey, I hope that you're enjoying today's podcast episode. Just a quick interruption to let you know that the Golden Hour Drip podcast has a monthly newsletter. You'll find podcast updates, upcoming events and information, and bonus content. If you haven't already, click the link in the show notes and join today. Now, back to the show. You know why? Because it was an empty room. I was recording in an empty room, and it was echoey, and I didn't have my microphone connected. So it only makes sense that it sounded that way. And I just remember thinking about it in two different ways. I could, one, be embarrassed, right? And be like, oh, I'm not like a really top-notch producer yet of a podcast episode, or I can just know that I am learning and I am continually trying, even that word right there, like continuously is what I meant, continuously becoming a better version of myself every single day. And I might not get it perfect right now. I might not get it perfect tomorrow, but I know that nothing is going to stop me from continuously showing up. And you might listen every single week or twice a week. And if you do, I love that. Thank you so much. But this might be your first episode that you've ever listened into. And you think, oh my gosh, like I would have had no idea. And that's where like confidence is so silly, because nobody can tell if you're faking confidence or not, because confidence is a way that you show up, but a lack of confidence is like in your brain almost, like it's not. And yes, like you can see a person, like if they're not exhibiting confidence, but you can't tell if a person who is acting confident, if they are actually confident or if they're faking it. You cannot tell, because there has been so many instances where I have felt really nervous. I felt like an imposter. I felt like so shaken to my boots, where I'm like, oh my gosh, like how am I going to show up for these people? And I went up there. I pretended to be confident. I pretended that I had it all under control, that I was the very best version that I could be, and I killed it. I did great. I did fine, and nobody could tell. And I think that is such an testament to nobody's going to know what you're struggling with, or the like real major things happening in your life if you don't share them. And sometimes we don't want to share them, and that's okay. Like there are things that you're going to keep private and you're going to keep to yourself and you're not going to share with other people. But there are things that you won't know that someone really needed to hear that until you are vulnerable. You do share it, and they're able to like get a glimpse in your soul, and they're like, oh my gosh, like I recognize this. I recognize feeling a lack of confidence. I recognize feeling like I have to be perfect in my job, in my relationship, in my career, at school, like any of those things. But in reality, like these are things and limitations that we are putting on ourselves. And it's this scared mindset to fail, like scared to fail, scared to try, show up and fall on your face. And I don't know why, because I find that I learn so much more from my failures than if someone just says, good job, right? And I could have like a successful outcome. I know so many times in school or in my extracurriculars, I remember asking for feedback and saying, what did you think? What did you not like? How can I improve? And there's been so many teachers or mentors in my life that they just say, oh my gosh, like you're doing great. Keep doing what you're doing. But in my opinion, like that's not helpful. That's not helping me like excel in an area that I want to excel. And when I do have like a failure, you'll never believe this, but I just had another incident. My mic battery just ran out, so I just had to swap out my battery. So like mishaps are going to happen. And I'll record my long episode and then my short episode on the same battery pack. And then after that, I have to like swap it out. I really need to find like a corded recorder. But I've tried the like rechargeable batteries. Those don't work. So I know that I'm like supposed to swap them out. And guess what? I forgot to swap them out. And my mic just died. And I caught it. Like I was able to see because the light went off. But I could have gone on for talking for much longer and not had my microphone record again. And things are going to happen in our life. And we just have to think, okay, like when I do fail, when I do fall on my face, am I going to be shamed about it? Am I going to be shameful? No, we're not going to be shameful. Will I pivot and change? Absolutely. Will I also have the confidence and the courage to share it with someone else because they might be needing to hear it? They might need to know, hey, I'm not alone. This happens to other people. It is not just on me. And when you can say that, when you can do that, it makes us feel not as alone. We feel better. We feel in a more positive mindset where we can take on anything because we have the community of people who are not afraid to fail, not afraid to show up and be seen, and instead know that what we have to offer and what is in our heart it's good enough. It's good. And I am just so appreciative of you listening to this podcast episode and hearing me and all of like the positive feedback or the likes or the subscribes, the ratings. Like I love all of that. And it makes my heart so happy. So if you've ever send some love my way, if you've liked a video, if you watched a video, if you listen to the audio version, just know like I appreciate the support so much because it means that I am making an impact, that I am connecting with someone and you feel seen, because there's so many times where I don't want to be seen, or I feel like when I am seen, like people might take it in like a wrong way or not connect with me or not like how I am showing up. But I'm not going to like stop doing what makes me happy because like I love to sit, I love to yap, I love to talk. Speaking of like mean comments, I had a comment like a month ago and it's like, this is the reason that people or not everyone should have a podcast. And I don't think that they listened to the like clip on TikTok. It was about like positive intent and just thinking, you know, you don't know where someone is coming from, but if you have positive intent around it, it might not change their mindset and it might not change how they like approach you or talk to you, but it changes your mindset. And it goes along with like, if you can't find a kind person, be the kind person. And the comment on it was literally this is prime example of why everyone or not everyone should have a podcast. And I was like, you're right. No, they're wrong. They're absolutely wrong. Like they didn't even listen. And sometimes like people are not going to hear you. They're not going to hear your story. They are not going to understand you or get you. They're just making their own assumptions, and it's more about them than about you. And I have just like had to disconnect with people who don't understand, who don't get me. And so if the dog barking annoyed you, like I get it, dogs barking annoy me too. Okay. Like you have no idea, like my cortisol levels like spike when my dogs bark, because I'm like, oh my gosh, like how are they reacting to other people? Right. And I just got a phone call. Are you kidding me? Oh my gosh. Guys, I might actually freak out. So after my phone call with my dad, I sat back down and I thought that I pressed play for my timer. I pressed play for my little Zoom recorder and I pressed play for my Canon. And guess what? I actually did not press play to record the video. And this episode, guys, like this is what I'm talking about. In the past, I would have literally become so angry and frustrated, like just because I was aspiring to do something, like I wanted it to go well. I wanted everything to fall into place. And sometimes things are not going to fall into place. And guess what? They haven't. Things have not fallen into place for this episode. And I truly think that it is to showcase that how you are showing up, no matter how imperfect, that is what matters. Like, to just be so real. And I just realized, because my camera will shut off after like 8 minutes, that it did not record that. So it's just going to be audio for a moment. And it's going to have like a cute little pic of myself, a little screen grab. Here it is. No, I'm sorry. This is literally so sad. But this happens in life. So the next little bit, is going to just be audio. It's going to be a nice little screen grab of me. I, in the past, would have tried to record, but sometimes being in person in the moment is more impactful and more true. Like, I cannot redo a feeling or a point, because I don't write everything down for these podcast episodes. I have a bullet of what I want to talk about, and then I let it go. So instead of trying to re-record, because I know the magic will be lost, because I know that I'm trying to recreate a feeling, I know that would be more of a disservice than just like letting it play without the visual. So I'm sorry, the next little bit of the podcast episode is not going to have any visual. I'm so sorry. Please enjoy the screen grab. Let's get into it. You absolutely have got to be joking. So my dad just called, and it's fine. Like, thank you, Dad. Love you so much. Anyways, like, that happens. Like, you're going to get distractions. You're going to get interruptions. And that does not mean that what you have to say is any less important. And I just find that I have to completely drown out the negative people, because the people who get me, right? Like, if you understand your dogs are also chaotic and will bark sometimes, or you understand that batteries die, or you get phone calls in the middle of a podcast, right? Like, things come up, and I'm either going to be the person you love, or I'm not going to be for you. And that's okay. Like, I am starting to just like really understand the purpose that I have and the commitment I'm making to just be exactly who I am, and to show up in the best way, and show up when it's messy, and show up when it is honestly just really difficult. I was doing a guided meditation the other day, and it was talking about, like, from your childhood, like, if you look back when you were a child, what are some of the characteristics that you would like call yourself? And she took us down like this path of like, what are you doing? What are you wearing? What do you love to do for fun? And it was definitely like in the mindset of a child, like your inner child, like who you were as a young kid, before someone told you that you were too much, before someone said that, you know, you were not enough of something, or you're mean, or not mean, but just like before anybody had an opinion of you, of, oh my gosh, like you raise your hand too much in class. Like, I remember I loved school. I loved to raise my hand. And I remember like people at one time like saying that I was bossy or a know-it-all. And I would start counting how many times I raised my hand in comparison to like the other kids in my class. And so even if I knew the answer, I wouldn't raise my hand. I'd be like, I've already answered 2 questions. I need to wait until at least 6 other questions are answered before I can raise my hand again. Or like counting the popcorn reading, like, okay, it popcorns to me next, like I'm gonna read my script so I don't mess up, and just like that perfectionism, right? And I had to think like before I would even consider like waiting to answer a question to like allow other kids, which is nice, right? That's nice. But the teacher didn't have to call on me. If I raised my hand because I knew the answer, she didn't have to call on me. And instead of me like feeling weird about being seen, like, oh, my classmates are going to think that I'm a know-it-all, like my teacher would have known that I love to learn and that I was raising my hand because I wanted to answer the question, and she could absolutely call on someone else, right? Like, that's a good teacher. A good teacher will be like, okay, I see Logan's paying attention, and she will self-regulate that. I didn't need to self-regulate that. And so I was thinking back before that, and I remember like my childhood I was outside a lot. I was outside and I was making concoctions with mud and water and flowers. I was in the garden. I was playing with my animals. We had cattle, we had chickens, we had goats, we had all the things. And I just think back to like being outside. I was messy. I was so messy, and I remember being grubby because sometimes I'd wear shoes, sometimes it would be those Old Navy flip-flops for $1, and you could get so grubby. And I remember, my mom saying, okay, like all the kids go shuffle through the shower. And like remembering, okay, like I was so fearless as a kid, and I always had all of my accessories. I had all of my things. I would pack a bag and I would put my sunglasses and my notebooks and my dolls, and I would just pack everything and want to take it on an adventure. And then she was like, okay, like think of a movie or a TV show or a book that like really defines some of the words that you came up with as a kid. And I was like, Judy B. Jones. I don't know why I've not thought of this series in so very long, but Judy B. Jones is loud and she is messy and she shows up even when she gets in trouble. Like I remember this book, like she got in trouble often, and I have such a fear around like getting in trouble. Like I want things to be perfect. I want people to think that I'm perfect, even though I'm not perfect. I'm nowhere near perfect, but to be like, oh gosh, like she has it all together. And while I strive to have everything together because that helps my brain and helps me feel good as a person, I know that sometimes things are not going to go according to plan. And instead of like covering that up, I can make mistakes. I can not be perfect. I can be like Judy B. Jones, who got in trouble by her teacher. Like I remember so many times in the book, one of her books that are coming to mind is like the stinky bus one. And she like had to sit next to a kid that she like didn't like, who was like bossy. I don't know. It has been so long since I've thought of that series at all, but I'm like, oh my gosh, like when did I start developing this fear of showing up, or start developing this fear that I could not be exactly who I am with all of the distractions of life, with my dogs, with my dad, with anything and everything. And it's crazy. Phone calls, like I usually silence my phone, before recording, but I just was messing with my settings, and I want to make sure that like my dad and my brother and my sister and my mom and Garrett, because I have such tight restraints on my phone where at 6:30 my apps are shutting off. I want to be present in my evening. I don't want to be tied to my phone, but I literally have just set the setting to where it will push their phone call through, because if so happened to be an emergency or something crazy happened, I want them to be able to call me and get a hold of me no matter what. And while that phone call might have been really distracting for you, and I apologize, I am sorry. I know that like my dad is going to be able to call me no matter what. If he needed me, I would be able to like go and do it. And I think having your boundaries and having like your core values is more important than the other things, right? Like me being able to answer a call from my dad is more important than showing up and trying to be perfect for this podcast, which I do want to be perfect. And this is not my abandonment of like striving to be better every single day, because that is what the podcast is about, right? Like golden hour is the best hour, and you want to chase after the best hour of the day and your best life. And so I'm very still much aligned on that. I still want to strive to be the best that I can be. But in the times where I'm not going to be perfect or things aren't going to go exactly according to plan, I'm still going to show up. I'm still going to be me with all of the distractions, with all of the things. And I don't want to continuously apologize, because there's nothing else than what it is. But those are some of the things that I've been working on and just trying to feel like good about, like really take ownership of it. And I find when I share things, when I speak about it, I have more ownership and I feel better about it. I feel like I am in control of it instead of it controlling me. So if I can acknowledge when things go wrong, when I can acknowledge when I am not exactly where I need to be, whether it's with my audio or my podcast or my life, because there are so many areas of my life where I'm like, oh gosh, I want to be the best I can be, but we're all still learning and we're all humans. And I think it's important to realize that we are just trying the best that we can do, right? We are all just trying to make it in this crazy life, crazy world. And so I usually talk about this in the beginning, like my peak and my pit, but we might as well get into it at the tail end of this episode. So I wanted to talk about my peak, which is my fall finds, because we are going into this next season. And I have been watching Gilmore Girls again, which is crazy because I have never finished the entire season of Gilmore Girls. I started watching Gilmore Girls last year for the very first time, truly watching it. I remember in college, it was on TV and I would play it, but I actually wasn't paying attention to it. I was either scrolling, I remember putting it on, but I cannot, I never watched the episode. I could not tell you what had happened. I did not know even the people of it, to be honest. It seriously was such background noise. And last year I decided that I really wanted to watch Gilmore Girls. So I started Gilmore Girls and I fell in love with it. And with fall, I was like, this is going to be a good way for me to get in the mindset. And I kind of love the parallel between Gilmore Girls and The Summer I Turned Pretty, because in The Summer I Turned Pretty, the main character talks about it was almost like winters didn't count. All there was summer. And so her storyline is every single summer, like The Summer I Turned Pretty and her storyline with summer. With Gilmore Girls, it's the opposite. It's like summer, Rory goes to Europe. And so we hardly don't even see a summertime, but it is just this emphasis on town, on the dog days of summer into August, into, Thanksgiving, Christmas. They hardly ever, I guess, yeah, there is some summer things in the earlier episodes. I have just started right off where I left off. So I think I'm on season 3, episode 2 or something very light, like that. So I'm not even sure how many episodes there are. I stopped watching last year when Lorelai was opening the inn and I was halfway through an episode. And so I just picked right up there. But I went thrift shopping for a couple fall items. And so my peak was just getting into this fall mindset. And because everything is linked, I love having my ads linked. And I know some people don't want all of their information all over the internet. Totally understand. But as we go into the fall season, I hate scary movies. Okay, I cannot stand them. They spook me out. Maybe one day I'll be better. But right now, I don't like to consume that content. So I want the ads to be tracking. If I say I don't want to watch that or I don't want to listen to that, I never want to see that spooky ad again. Okay. So I'm very, very imperative. I want it to be tracking. I want it to know what I want to see, which is cute home good items or anthropology items, not this stupid spooky movie coming out. Okay. Thank you. No, thank you. Anyways, so Gilmore Girls was popping up on my social media because obviously I'm watching it and Netflix will somehow be linked to my TikTok. So I saw something about how everyone wants to hate on Rory because she is really selfish. And it was a parallel between Miss Maisie or Miss Marvel. I haven't watched this show or this movie, The Amazing Maisie or The Marvelous Miss Maisie, I think is what it is. But it's talking about the parallel how The Marvelous Miss Maisie was very self-centered. And I have not seen that show and I don't know anything about it. But I thought this take was really kind of interesting, to be honest, and how everybody wants to hate on Rory because she's like really selfish. And I like very briefly listened to it because I didn't want any spoilers, because I've never finished the season before, or the episode, or the entirety. Like, I haven't watched all of them yet. I'm still like halfway or maybe a third, I don't know, of the seasons. And it's talking about how, like, at the end, Rory doesn't really get like this good storyline at the end. I'm not sure. No spoilers here because I don't know what's going on. But anyways, it was talking about how life isn't about us, but it's about the other people around us. And so we think that like Rory is really selfish and in her own right. Like, she is coming to adulthood, like 17, 18, 19. And that can be really difficult. Like, I think back to when I was 18 and how selfish I was, and like how I was showing up and what I thought was important and what really isn't that important. But it was showing that we need to be taking care of the people around us. And sometimes that means that we are being kind and we're putting someone else's needs before ours. And I thought like seeing that was really kind of like right time, like right place, right time. Whereas like I was thinking about myself, how sometimes it's not about me. It's about like the people I'm serving or the people around me, how I can be so caught up and like, it has to be perfect. It has to be all these things, but it's truly, it's not about me. It's about how I can show up and connect with the people around me, right? Like, life is not about doing it alone or being perfect or being the absolute best, but it's about human connection. And I thought that was kind of like a sweet thing. And I did, with my peak, I did find some really good fall trends, but been watching Gilmore Girls, and I went to the thrift store because I always think that secondhand is better. Like, if you can utilize it, if you can have it in your home, like there's so like much waste in our world. And so I really try hard not to be wasteful, but I only spent like $15. I got 4 sets of mugs, right? No, 3 sets. I got 3 sets of mugs. I got an orange pair for 25 cents each, so that's 50 cents. I got this like really cute nude one with like ridges on the lip, so cute. I got a white one, and then I got like an orange one with a truck and a pumpkin on it. So cute, right? If I would have gone to Marshall's, it could have been like $7 to $10 per mug, but I got it reused. I also got this like white pumpkin for $5. It's like one of those casserole dishes. So cute. I got a candlestick holder. Like, there's so many things that I found, and I'm like, like sometimes someone else's junk is your treasure, right? Like, trash to treasure. And same goes like with what you're going through. You might think it is so trashy. I might think that this episode has been a dumpster fire, which in some ways I feel like this episode has been a dumpster fire, where it's like, oh gosh, like I have this going on and this going on, and I feel a little rambunctious. I feel a little crazy, a little unsettled. But I know that that is the truth and the most authentic I can be. And I might think it's trash, but you might have needed to hear that. You might have needed to know that it is totally okay for you to show up exactly who you are. And maybe you're in your selfish era, like Rory. Maybe you're so selfish, and that's okay. We're going to have times like that, because if we don't have the bad times, if we don't have the times where we can look back and think, oh gosh, like that didn't work out right. And we're back to visual. And I actually think it's because my camera died. I don't know, because I was actually looking at the SD card on where I could like come back from, or what I was talking about before it cut off or cut the visual. And I think my battery died, which is insane because I actually had my like batteries charged up, and I don't know if one of the batteries didn't get like pressed down all the way in the charger, because that is something I have to replace because anyways, you never know what's going to happen. Like, this is what I'm saying. Like, it's not about you. It's never about you. It's about who you are showing up for, who like you are trying to help on their journey as well. And there's going to be people who are going to help you in your life. And I think it's like paying it forward when they like do something for you, like someone else. And I am just like, honestly happy that I continued and did not re-record this episode. And I'm sorry if this was sporadic. I'm so sorry if this was like crazy for you. It was crazy for me, but instead of like trying to be so perfect, I've just decided that, you know what? I'm going to be exactly how it was, because nothing happens by chance. And it's crazy that I sat down to record this episode about showing up in the imperfect way, whether it's drinking your coffee, whether it is taking a pause, your dog's barking. Like, there's going to be so many things that happen in your life that are hectic that you cannot control or cannot prevent. Like, we can do all of the safety measures possible, but sometimes it's not going to go according to plan, and you're going to have to be adaptable. You're going to have to pivot. You're going to have to just be okay with how it turns out. So this is how it turned out. This is real life. This is the crazy. And I think that this episode was actually recorded perfectly. My Zoom recorder died. My camera died. I got a phone call. My dogs barked. Like, there were so many other elements to this, but I truly think that it was exactly how it was supposed to be. Murphy's Law. Anything wrong that can go wrong will go wrong. And it's not how life is happening to you, but it is what you're going to take with that and how you're going to move on, how it's going to impact your life. So thank you for listening to this episode. If you made it all the way to the end, thank you. Props to you. You're amazing. And I really appreciate it. So please just subscribe. 5 stars would be great. And I hope to see you in the next one. Bye.